Very exciting. Sure, this is only a midterm election year, and sure, it's just Kentucky, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, and Oregon, but come on! Primary day. Elections, voting booths, robocalls, nasty, negative, last-minute campaign ads. It is days like this when the staid march of democracy gets a little overheated and loosens its collar and says stuff that is inadvertently interesting. Primary day. Yes. The single most interesting thing about all the primaries in total today will be turnout, something that's often hard to measure on primary day itself other than by anecdotal observation. But once the unanecdotal real turnout numbers for today are in, those can be a pretty good measure of voter enthusiasm, which itself is a pretty good measure of expected voter turnout for November, which can tell us more than any one race today can about how the midterms are going to be shaping up. Still, though, some of the individual races today are turning out to be fascinating. In Kentucky, there are primaries in both parties for a Senate seat that's becoming available because Jim Bunning is retiring. Jim Bunning, perhaps most famous of late for swearing at people in the Senate, for being inexplicably contrarian at all times, including cussing out and talking smack about his own home state Republican Party. Senator Bunning last ran for re-election in 2004 against Democrat Daniel Mongiardo, who Bunning infamously accused of looking like one of Saddam Hussein's sons, because Mr. Mongiardo is of Italian heritage or is a brunette or something. Nobody really knew. Jim Bunning says stuff like that all the time. Daniel Mongiardo is now Kentucky's lieutenant governor. He faced off today in the Democratic Senate primary against Kentucky's state attorney general, Jack Conway. With 86% of precincts reporting in that race, it is 45% for Jack Conway, the attorney general, to 42% for Daniel Mongiardo, the lieutenant governor and the man who ran against Jim Bunning before. Now, on the Republican side, the Senate nominee will be Ron Paul's son, Dr. Rand Paul, who announced his candidacy for this seat last year on this show. He was not the Republican establishment candidate. That was his opponent, Trey Grayson, Kentucky's Secretary of State. Mr. Grayson lost to Rand Paul tonight, despite the patronage of Mitch McConnell, Kentucky's senior senator, the Republican Party's leader in the Senate. Mitch McConnell considered to be so central to Kentucky Republican politics that the Republican Party headquarters in Kentucky is literally named the Mitch McConnell Building. They might have to change that. A lot of Rand Paul's support in this primary in Kentucky came from the national movement in support of his father. The Ron Paul movement is technically a Republican movement, but the Republican establishment and even a lot of the conservative movement kind of hates the Ron Paul folks. So it remains to be seen if Republicans are going to be able to throw wholehearted support behind this Senate candidacy now that Rand Paul has secured the Republican nomination. Rand Paul versus either Jack Conway or Daniel Mongiardo, depending on how this works out tonight, the heretofore unknown Democratic winner in either case. That race is probably going to be one of the most interesting Senate races in the country this fall, if only for the ability it will have to illuminate the, I think, fascinating split between the Republican movement, Republican Party writ large, and the Ron Paul movement that's been so captivating to so many, particularly young Republican-leaning voters. Now, the only race in the country today that is Republican versus Democrat, where the winner will go right to Washington, is, as I discussed with Chuck Todd, a special election in Pennsylvania. That'll replace 18-term Democratic Congressman Jack Murtha. Jack Murtha died in February. Jack Murtha held this seat for my entire lifetime, but it is not necessarily considered to be a Democrat country. His seat is not considered to be in Democrat country. When Pennsylvania went for Barack Obama over John McCain by 10 points in the last presidential election, this district, Jack Murtha's district, still went for John McCain. Again, this isn't a primary. This is a Republican versus Democrat election. But neither of the candidates in the race could be mistaken for a liberal. The Democrat in the race is Mark Kritz. He worked on Jack Murtha's staff for years. He says he's pro-life and that he is against health reform, for what that's worth. He also had Bowser from Sha Na Na campaigning for him, the actor John Bauman. That's neither here nor there. I just think that's neat. Bowser. On the Republican side, the National Republican Congressional Committee really wants to win this race. They have spent something on the order of $1 million on their candidate, Tim Burns. At this point, again, what we're looking at in the Pennsylvania 12th District special election, we've only got about 4% of precincts reporting, but we are looking at Democrat Mark Kritz over Tim Burns, 59 to 39%. But again, don't extrapolate too much from those numbers. Just 4% of precincts reporting there. Whoever wins, they will have to defend the seat again in November. Now, still more results are expected throughout the night. We're here live on MSNBC till the wee hours. Wee hours as in... it's primary night. Stay with us. That whole place for politics thing is true.